Hey guys, welcome to another session of RBTL. It's a bit late as right now as I'm doing the recording, we're already in the maintenance. Just quick highlights on certain things and my commentary on the game overall. I definitely think that one of the biggest things is probably the Abyss, but let's talk about this. Again, expansion of the story, I'm still very behind. Decent necklace. This destruction set is definitely very cool. Having 11 crit damage base, so 55 at max, is actually not that bad on destruction set because you're already gonna get insane amount of crit damage. The only problem is getting health on this one. I'd say probably like attack and crit chance would be really cool. I'm never gonna get that. Abyss floor 100 finally here. Oh man, if they're gonna wait a full year for 10 floors, that's quite a long wait for us to keep doing the same stuff over and over. So I think everybody's gonna be looking forward to this. So once the patch goes through, if we're gonna finally get this, there is obviously some new rewards as well. And I just got a screenshot here, and credit to my friend Emblem who gave this screenshot from the Korean stream. So these are the 88s that are available in the Abyss. If you look, and if you don't even understand Korean, it's actually not hard to deduce there, but they're basically the exact same base stats and sub stats as the previous iterations of the Abyss gear. So the 70, the 71 ones, and then the 80, 85, yeah. So it's 88s. Obviously the base stats are higher, but hopefully they roll high, because I think everybody's had some experience where the free 88 gears, especially like the arena ones for example, have been rolling really bad. Really low. They might be the substats you want, but they're low. So just keep in mind that for players that may be looking, oh man, hopefully there's crit damage, there isn't. But again, you're getting a lot more attack. So attack necklace, attack ring, attack boot, and then you have your health, speed, effectiveness, and crit chance subs. And on the right side there, and then on the left side, I think it's like health and, well, it depends because the armor, helmet, and the weapon have different stats, but it's the exact same. So even if I don't remember the exact substats, most people should be familiar by now if you've picked up the other Abyss sets. As you can see there, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to kind of decipher there, but floor 92, 93, 94, 96, 97, 98 will have the gear drops. So really cool. I'm very looking forward to this in terms of yeah, content, new content. Yeah, so let's continue on. So let me swap back my screen here, display capture. Okay, there you go. All right, so very Charlotte, and then Charlotte Charlotte remake. Now I've gotten both sides. Like, some people are pretty excited and they've asked, hey Jagan, what do you think about her rework? Like, is she worse than the way she was before? And in my opinion, I kind of treat her as like a totally different hero, and I think everybody should. But for those who really love Charlotte the way she at this point, the way she was, it feels bad, man, because you kind of got to say goodbye to her. It's kind of sad to see this, to be honest. Like, I think it's a different thing when they buff a hero, but it's another thing when they remake it, so you lose the essence of the hero. Like, what may have like originally drawn you to her probably was her skill set. I mean, some people actually like the look of her, like her personality or whatever. I didn't. If you ever watch my science video on measuring her forehead, I have a really big problem with her forehead. But in terms of like her original skill set, I actually really liked it. I did recommend her in one of my top 10 heroes to reroll for. Long time video from a long time ago, but anyways, let's talk about her a bit. Her new skills. So the S1 here, dual swords, as you can read there, 35% chance if you molded this, up to 50% chance to decrease the attack for 1 turn. When the caster is buffed on her turn, the dual swords become an AoE attack, so no longer single target. And then when used on the caster's turn, as you can read as well, it increases the combat radius by 20%, and this attack does not trigger a dual attack. So I mean, that makes sense, otherwise it'd just be too broken. The damage on this, also it acquires 20 fighting spirit, and that becomes very important for Charlotte. She becomes more like a warrior bruiser, even though she doesn't have HP or defense scaling, but the fighting spirit concept is the same. So you fill it up and then you drain it, or it can be drained. So the S1 compared to her original one, and I remember the dev notes were talking about like, oh, the original one, it was too hard, it's too situational, and I have to agree. So if you compare one for one, I prefer her new S1 a lot better, because she can technically self buff. So the S2 here, this is also an active skill. Oh, sorry, it was an active skill, but it becomes a passive skill. So when the caster is attacked, they gain 10 or max 20 fighting spirit if you max all of this, and then it increases attack and defense for 1 turn. So they flipped that that ability pretty much from the S1 to gain an attack buff, but to gain more survivability, she gets a defense buff when she's attacked. When the caster is attacked on the turn, when attacked on the caster's turn, acquires fighting spirit is doubled. So on the caster's turns means that if she gets countered by anything while it's still her turn, so like SSB, ML Ken, Charles, or any Elbrus user, the fighting spirit increase will be doubled, and it becomes really quick. So she can rack up her fighting spirit very, very quick. And then of course, it can grant the increased attack and defense. So when she's attacked either passively or attacked actively, she gains those buffs. So technically, I mean, if people have, like, let's say you run her in a PvP fight, and people have like AoE defenses set up, you're gonna get buffs pretty much the entire time, AoE or counter defenses, of course. But of course, the problem is the survivability of Charlotte is not super high. She's a Leo Knight. I don't think that changes. Therefore, higher attack for a Knight, but lower HP. Like if you compare like 1-to-1 with Charles, she definitely is squishier. So that might be something that you have to build towards in terms of like you have to build her tanky. And then the S3, originally, I mean, this was a beauty. You can soul burn it, and pretty much you can infinitely cycle her S3. It did a massive amount of damage. There is 50% Mola raw damage from the skill enhance in the previous rendition, and in the updated version, there's only 40%. So 10% is a huge deal, especially on a high damage skill. 10% is a huge loss. Plus the fact that someone on stream actually just like told me and reminded me that originally it was up to a 2.4, and most likely you would do it at the 2.4 damage when her focus gauge was maxed. It would be at a 2.4 damage mod, which is crazy for an AoE, but it's reduced now to a 1.57 with a 40 mole, so it won't be as strong. But in terms of the skill itself, let's take a look. So after the awakening, 75% chance to make them unhealable for 2 turns, and successful attacks always result in a critical hit. That means that if you don't miss, it will result in a critical hit. So people have been asking, hey, you know, maybe we should build her with low crit rate and high crit damage, and I think that is something that her kit allows, because the thought behind the devs changing reducing the mod is based on the fact that, yeah, we're gonna give her this like really strong kind of passive in the S3, so you could build it for really high crit damage to compensate for the damage loss. But in most situations, like I don't know, like I think this way makes her a lot more usable in PvP, but for PvE, she won't be as effective, especially like long runs, like something like Hell Raid. I've never tried Fire Charlotte in the Abyss, but if people have, that could be very abusable too, like just AoE spam. But yeah, so I think overall her rework makes her a bit more like have chemistry, and that's something I'm looking towards. Like when I'm seeing like new heroes released, for example, like the recently released series, I feel that it's kind of like, or ML Tywin, for example. That's probably the best example for me. I said this before, I'm like looking at all three skills, it's just like they all do really different things, whereas like her combined S1, S2, S3, it feels like they all work in tandem with each other. And that's what I really like about this Charlotte as opposed to the previous Charlotte. The previous Charlotte, it had the problem that I just described. The S3 was like the juicy bit. Everything else is kind of conditional, and you don't even really want to use it. Like once you get the S3, you just want to keep spamming it. But I think this is much more usable in PvP, PvE scenarios. I think she's gonna be slightly weaker, but I have to wait and see because the way you could build her is much more drastically different than the previous one. So again, I think my overall feeling is like, yeah, I'm gonna miss the original Charlotte because like if you just take away the animation, you take away the art style, the characters are in their skill sets, and this is a different character, different skill set. So yeah, goodbye to old Charlotte. We have the drop rate banner up as well. As people would know, if you're watching this video, you probably have seen the MO Charlotte preview video as well. I'm going to be talking about that in a separate video, so later on if you want to check that out, definitely check that out. But her drop rate is up. Now here's the kicker. We have been debated in the past where whether RGB, actually just recently, like actually a couple heroes like in tandem were like announced to be like this really OP hero, and then they like last minute nerf them because ML Charlotte is coming out and she seems to be very strong. We got to be careful of maybe stocking up on Fire Charlotte. If you don't have Fire Charlotte and you like the kit you see above, I would say recommend maybe pull for her. I think she could be usable. The meta right now in PvP, the ice meta, I think is not as strong anymore because you got really strong earth heroes to counter ice, and then it kind of makes a full circle now. So we kind of see like fire heroes getting buffs, fire heroes becoming really crazy. So I feel the RGB balance right now in the game is actually decently good, although I know people are saying that there's so many more ice limited heroes. I kind of get it, but I feel that there's so many like earth heroes that are really strong, and then again fire heroes need to take out the earth, so I feel that that's pretty good. If you need a Charlotte, I would say try it out. I myself might be pulling for this banner. The only reason is because Holy Sacrifice also got a really good buff, and I'm one away from max limit broke. If I don't get it, it's 95% proc rate. If I get it, it's 100% proc rate. That makes a pretty big difference in a fight. So I might be doing it on, of course, hoping that potentially I get Charlotte as well. ML Charlotte, again, I'll talk about it more in detail, but it's a defense self-imprint, which makes me theorize that she might be a defense scaling bruiser, because we don't have too many of them, at least too many meta ones, so it could be high potential. But again, so if you don't have her, and obviously you don't have ML Charlotte, it might be actually a good banner to get anyway, so just something to consider. But otherwise, if you do have her and you're limited resources, I would save it for Kaorik because he looks to be really dope, which is another thing I'm going to talk about as well in another video. Anyways, we got the third part of the story finally over. It's not to say that I want it to be over, but it is over. There's also a background pack, so just make sure you clear all your reputations, and you'll have no problem getting that. And let me see if I want to cover anything else. I want to talk about, okay, that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to cover, like the major parts. I want to talk about this. I will say this pretty much over and over, so hopefully I don't keep I don't sound like a broken record here, but I have to say that at least for competitive PvP players, Smilegate, if you're hearing this, please really consider fixing the Mola. I don't know if it's a refund that's gonna help now. You're coming out with heroes and really good heroes that people want to try in RTA, people want to try in GVG, and you keep pushing more competitive PvP play, but the MOLA is restricting the players from actually exploring it. You're doing all these like wonderful dev buffs, rework on heroes, creating all these new heroes, but we can't really use them if we don't have the MOLA invested. So I really think that you guys, if you guys are working on this, hopefully they are, they really should get it. I think at this point gear is really no problem. Yeah, you get salty rules, but in my opinion, I've seen every player that I've talked to like get way better gear now with the conversion. So I think MOLA right now is restricting top players from experimenting with builds and playing with them. So in terms of like, if Smilegate, if you're evaluating a hero's usefulness or amount of use in order to consider them to be buffed, consider the fact that players may not have MOLA. So it's not whether or not you make a hero really good, it's that players might not have MOLA to use them. So it's just something to keep in mind. And the very last thing I wanted to say is, of course, I think so far most of what I've heard is that Cerise is actually was a very poor decision making on Smilegate's part in terms of her being a limited hero. Again, I said this throughout the whole week, and now with Cowrick released in terms of the information, I honestly don't know why Cerise is a limited hero. She doesn't have a limited banner technically. She has a 2-week banner, which most, at least like Luna DN reruns, were 3 weeks long. So it almost feels like they didn't even really think that it's limited. So in my opinion, like, it feels so baity right now to do that. I have to say this, and on behalf of like some of the community members as well, it's not a good thing that you're doing that. Cerise had no reason to be a limited hero, and Cowrick actually looks better, at least right now. Anyways, that's the end of my ranty portion. Everything else, like, good job, you know, keep on pumping content, keep on doing this stuff, because we love the game, we want to see it succeed. So definitely just be careful of some of the actions you guys go down towards, in terms of I'm talking to the developers. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this. I'm going to end this for the video recording sake. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching this session of RBTL, and I will see you guys on the next one.